Have you ever noticed that the biggest things in life rarely appear quietly? They do not arrive like a surprise gift falling from the sky. They send signals first. And the strangest part, those signals never look like what you imagine. Many people pray for a breakthrough, blessings, or change. But when the signs appear, they fail to recognize them. Before God gives you something big, He does not begin with the blessing. He begins with a movement inside your soul. My own observations have taught me that the unconscious always sends signals before consciousness is ready to expand. And in the language of spirituality, this is how God whispers, "Prepare yourself." Great things never arrive without winds of indication. And when your soul starts feeling those movements, you are no longer who you used to be. You are being led. We shall explore the clear, powerful, unmistakable signs that almost every soul experiences when God is about to give you something big. It is perhaps no coincidence that you are hearing these words now. You might be much closer to what is being prepared for you than you realize. Are you ready to receive it? Pressure before promotion. There is something strange that almost every soul stepping into a major chapter experiences. Right before God prepares to give you something big, life does not become lighter, it becomes heavier. In those days, you do not know why you feel more tired than usual, more emotional, and even small things feel overwhelming. You look around and see your relationships becoming more strained instead of warmer. Your work suddenly becomes intense, as if every challenge arrives at once, and the opportunities you thought were secured vanish at the last minute. Sometimes you think, "Am I going in the wrong direction?" But in truth, this is often the very first sign that a major blessing is approaching. As I have often noted, any expansion of consciousness must pass through a zone of pressure. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Pressure does not destroy you. It merely expands the capacity of your soul so you can hold something bigger that God is preparing. If you pay attention, everyone God lifts up walks through such a phase. Remember Joseph in the Bible? Before he became the second in command of Egypt, he did not receive blessings immediately. On the contrary, everything in his life seemed to collapse. Sold by his brothers, falsely accused, thrown into prison, forgotten by the very person he helped. If you look only at that phase, you would think his life was being abandoned by God. But in reality, each event was preparation. Joseph did not know it, but every layer of pressure was a layer of elevation. Every time he was pushed down in what looked like failure, he was actually being moved into the exact position God intended. And the same thing is happening to you. What makes this phase confusing is the feeling of paradox. You are doing everything right, living with integrity, praying, trying, but the results do not get better. You are stronger, yet feel more exhausted. You are more mature, yet feel lonelier. You pray for guidance but receive challenges instead. But this is not punishment. This is inner restructuring. When a new level of consciousness wants to be born, the old one must break. Your familiar mind is no longer wide enough to hold what God is preparing. So He stretches you, tests you, lets certain things fall away to prepare you for something greater. Imagine the soul as a vessel. You ask God to fill it with blessings, but your vessel is too small, and the only thing He can do is expand that vessel. Expansion must create pressure. Pressure causes pain. But it is the only way you can contain what He has already destined for you. In my sessions, I once heard a woman say, "Why is it that the closer I get to my goal, the more everything becomes chaotic? Why doesn't God make things easier for me?" I simply smiled and replied, "Because He is rebuilding your foundation. When the foundation is deeper, the building can rise higher." What you call chaos is sometimes simply the divine construction site at work. When the soul is preparing to expand, the unconscious will push all unhealed fragments to the surface: fear of abandonment, insecurity, feelings of inadequacy, and wounded memories. You are not becoming worse. You are being purified. You are not becoming weaker. You are being reforged. Relationships become tense, not to destroy you, but to peel away connections that no longer belong in your future. Opportunities disappear not to break your hope, but to prevent you from walking through doors that are not yours. When Joseph was thrown into prison, he did not know the prison was the secret hallway to the throne. When you fall under pressure, you also do not know that the very place where you feel you are collapsing is the staircase leading you to promotion. And that is why, in the days when life becomes heavy, you must not trust your temporary feelings. Feelings tell you that you are tired, but faith tells you that you are being prepared. The more cornered you feel, the more likely you are being positioned exactly where God wants you to be. Sometimes He must close the doors you cling to so that you can walk toward the door He has already chosen. So if today you feel the pressure increasing, do not assume you are moving backward. Pressure is the sign of elevation. You are not being buried by God. You are being lifted. You are not collapsing. You are being stretched exactly the way your soul needs to step into a greater blessing. You are not in the wrong place. You are, in ways you do not yet see, being placed exactly where He prepared long ago. The sacred inner shift. If pressure is how God expands the capacity of the soul, then the next phase feels like a quiet shift you cannot name. It is no longer heaviness, but a sense that you no longer belong to the old place. You do not understand why, but everything familiar starts feeling loose. Conversations that once excited you now feel shallow. Places that once made you feel at home now feel tight. Habits that once gave you comfort now feel heavy, like worn-out shoes you no longer want to wear. You feel restless but don't know what you're waiting for. You feel urged but don't know where you're going. And the strangest part, even though nothing outside has changed, inside you know for certain that something bigger is calling you. This is not boredom, not lack of motivation, not depression. This is the sacred inner shift, the stirring you can't shake. I call this moment the inner calling, the knock of the soul, urging you to rise from your old shell and move closer to the self, the divine center within you. When the self wants to grow, it creates inner tightness to signal that you have outgrown your old life. Imagine living in a small room you have known for years. You do not hate the room, but one morning the walls feel closer. No one forces you to leave. No event pushes you out. But you feel you no longer belong there. The room has not changed. You have. This is the clearest metaphor for this phase. Your soul is quietly expanding, making old structures too small to contain you. I once spoke with a woman named Elena, a literature teacher who had been in the profession for over 15 years. She loved her students, loved her work, and never considered leaving. But for the past 6 months, she had felt something strange inside. Lessons that once excited her now felt empty. Conversations in the teacher's lounge, once comforting like a daily rhythm, suddenly felt shallow and repetitive. She still did everything well, still smiled, but deep inside there was a quiet movement she could not name. Elena shared that every time she walked into her classroom, she felt suffocated. There was no conflict, no wounds, no event pushing her away, only a soft, persistent feeling that her life was opening in another direction. One afternoon, while grading papers by the window, she suddenly felt a gentle intuition. It's time to step out. Strangely, she felt no fear and no sadness, only peace, as if a new chapter was calling her from afar. In religion, this is called awakening. In my work, it is the awakening of the self. In spirituality, it is said, God awakens the soul before he changes the circumstances. Circumstances do not shift first. The soul shifts first. The restlessness is not to worry you, but to help you recognize you no longer belong to the old season. As I have written, in each of us there is another whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams and tells us how differently he sees us. That is why you feel the urge, because the one inside you has seen what you have not and is pulling you out of your old mold. The sacred inner shift always comes before all external transformation. When God is about to move you into a new chapter, he does not begin with an open door. He begins with inner discomfort so you can no longer remain in a place you have already outgrown. The interesting thing is this phase usually has no evidence, no physical signs, no announcement from heaven, only a strange, quiet, undeniable feeling. I don't belong here anymore. That is the voice of God. And you will notice this. When the soul begins to shift, the old things will fall away naturally. Relationships no longer aligned with your frequency fade. Old activities lose their meaning. Shallow conversations exhaust you. You do not have to force yourself to leave. You simply recognize you are being led away. Just like when spring arrives, the tree does not struggle to bloom. It simply responds to the movement within, and the flowers bloom on their own. You are in that exact phase. God is not rushing. He is not forcing. This time he uses gentle stirring to remind you that what is coming is bigger than anything you've ever known. Your soul is waking up, and awakening always happens inside before it appears outside. So, if these days you feel restless without knowing why, feel misaligned with what once felt familiar, or sense a vague calling from a place you've never been, do not panic. This is not confusion. This is direction. You are being pulled out of the old to enter the place God has long prepared for you. Your soul always wakes up before the world outside changes, and that sacred inner shift never goes to the wrong address. If these days you also feel that quiet movement, the sense that you no longer belong where you were, the sense that something bigger is softly calling your name, let this be a small sign to you that you are not walking this season alone, and that the movement inside the soul is always the first signal of a chapter approaching closer than you think. Thrive. Grace and unusual favor finds you. Just as your soul has passed through heavy days when pressure seemed ready to break you but mysteriously expanded your inner capacity, you enter another phase, gentler yet deeper. The place where grace starts operating and good things begin finding you before you even look for them. Some call it luck, but those who have experienced it know it feels nothing like luck. It has precision, subtlety, and orchestration so perfect that it makes you pause and ask, why is everything aligning so flawlessly? When God prepares to give you something big, grace usually comes first, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly opening the way. You begin seeing doors open that you never knocked on. Someone mentions your name at the exact moment you need it. An invitation appears out of nowhere precisely when you are praying about that very thing. Small moments, yet they create major turning points in a person's life. Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. I believe synchronicity is not just a sign, but a bridge between the physical world and the deepest layers of the unconscious. These meaningful coincidences are the response of the self when you are moving in alignment with the path you are meant to follow. Therefore, each synchronicity is not merely a spiritual event, but also a psychological sign that you are in harmony with your true nature, moving in the direction your soul has long desired. And when the conscious mind, the unconscious, and the divine fall into the same straight line, life begins to operate with such precision that you cannot help but bow in awe. I once met a man named Marcus. He was an architect who had applied for a position he deeply desired for 2 years, but never received a reply. One day, nearly ready to give up, he decided to help a group of students revise their design plans for free. During that conversation, one student unexpectedly said, "You should meet my uncle. He's looking for an architect for a new project." The student's uncle happened to be the director of the company Marcus had applied to. The meeting that followed lasted only 30 minutes, but it was enough to change his future. He said, "I didn't look for that opportunity. It found me, and it found me the moment I had let go enough to let God act." Synchronicity always works that way. It does not follow ordinary logic, but the logic of the soul. When your inner world opens, your energy shifts, and the outer world reflects that shift. If the soul is a frequency, then grace is the signal that responds to that frequency. Like a radio, when you tune to the right frequency, the sound becomes clear. You do not cause the alignment, you simply begin to hear it. The mind, when purified through trial, becomes more sensitive to guiding signals. You don't just see the signs, you understand them. You don't just meet opportunities, you are pulled into the right place at the right time. Imagine walking through a dense forest. When your mind is chaotic, you hear only random noises, rustling leaves, snapping branches, blowing wind, all mixed together. But when your mind becomes still, like a quiet lake, you start hearing smaller things, footsteps leading to the right path, water flowing where an exit lies. Synchronicity is those small sounds, the ones that appear only when you are still enough to hear. The Bible once said in Proverbs 3:5-6, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and he shall direct your paths." Meaning, when you surrender your whole heart, he will make your paths straight. That straightening sometimes does not come through loud instructions, but through small pieces silently fitting together so perfectly that probability can't explain them. That's why, when God prepares a big blessing, you do not need to knock on the door. He will leave it open. When grace is operating, everything stops happening by your strength and starts happening by His. You no longer have to force things into place because they naturally move into their right position. You no longer chase opportunities because opportunities start running toward you. You no longer struggle to find the right people because the right souls begin to appear. Not because you suddenly became lucky, but because your inner world has entered the readiness stage. And when the right thing arrives at the right moment, remember this: it is never a coincidence. It is a sign that God is straightening the path you're about to walk. So when the great blessing arrives, your heart is wide enough to hold it. If you're seeing unexpected doors open, the right people appear, and opportunities align as if arranged by an unseen hand, know that grace is in motion, and that is the surest sign that something big is approaching closer than you think. IV. The attacks intensify before the breakthrough. Have you ever wondered why the most beautiful moments in life often appear right after the darkest days? As if before God gives you something great, the darkness suddenly becomes more aggressive. The attacks become more relentless and you are pushed to your very limit. This is not punishment. It is a form of filtering to see whether your soul is strong enough to carry the blessing He is about to place on you. I call this the shadow confrontation, the stage in which the shadow within us rises not to destroy but to be healed. It carries old fears, unresolved wounds, and memories that once made us retreat. When God wants to lift you to a higher level, He requires you to face the things you once ran from, because you cannot step into a new chapter while still carrying the heart of the old one. Remember, before an arrow can be shot farthest, it must first be pulled back the hardest. The greater the pullback, the greater the launch. The stronger the attack, the more clearly you know you are about to go far. Your soul is being stretched not to break you, but to propel you to where you belong. I recall a woman named Annabelle. She had just received a huge opportunity, a full scholarship for an arts program in Paris, something she had dreamed of for 10 years. But just when the joy had barely settled, everything began to collapse. Her mother fell ill. A close friend misunderstood her and turned away. Her employer exerted unprecedented pressure, making daily work suffocating. She shared that, in the moment when everything seemed to be turning against her, Annabelle realized a truth she had never seen clearly before. Nothing was ruining her opportunity. Everything was preparing her for it. The misunderstanding taught her to separate her self-worth from others' approval. The pressure from every direction forced her to build an inner strength she never knew she had. In the end, when everything had settled, she said something very soft but full of self-possession. I am ready to step into my new life, not because the opportunity has arrived, but because I have become someone capable of carrying it. During this stage, you will feel attacks coming from every direction. Even things that used to feel normal now become burdens. People misunderstand you. Small criticisms drain you. Unexpected temptations appear, laziness, doubt, or even old relationships returning at the exact moment you feel vulnerable. Consider the journey of those who achieve greatness. Before stepping onto the world stage, they often go through a series of attacks that seem determined to break them. Storms hit them as if the darkness was trying to pull them back just before the light reached them. Darkest moments are what prepare us to shine the brightest. Those attacks do not crush us. They forge us into someone strong enough to hold the light we are about to step into. When the shadow rises most fiercely, it is because the deepest layers of the soul are being restructured. A person is not just facing fears, but learning again how to stand firm within their own inner world. Strong attacks often activate the entire unconscious system, forcing you to see parts of yourself you once avoided. And it is precisely this act of seeing that makes the soul more mature, more resilient, and more capable of holding greater things. When darkness pushes you to your limits, it is unintentionally opening the door for a new level of consciousness to be born. Many people believe that when attacks intensify, it is a sign they are going in the wrong direction, but in truth, it is proof they are going the right way. The enemy only attacks what has value. Darkness only fights against what has the potential to create light. No soul ever enters powerful elevation without first going through a dark season. I have always maintained that no tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. Meaning, in order to rise high, you must go deep. To receive something great, you must touch the darkness within yourself. There is no shortcut. There is no exception. And there is one thing you must understand. When external attacks intensify, it is because something inside you is changing. Expansion is happening. The weakest, most fragile parts of you are being brought to the surface to be healed. The shadow only rises when it is about to leave. Therefore, if you are being attacked from many sides, if your spirit feels exhausted even though you have done nothing wrong, if people misunderstand you more than usual, if temptations pull you down more intensely than ever, do not rush to think you are losing. In truth, you are very close. Very close. God does not test you to see how weak you are, but to show you how strong you already are. He is not pulling you down, he is pulling you back like an arrow, and when the moment comes, you will be launched with a force you never imagined. Let this be a gentle affirmation to your own soul. I am still standing, and I am still moving in the right direction. Sometimes a small realization like that is enough to remind yourself of the truth. Darkness always tries to hide. You are far stronger than you think. The sacred silence before the revelation, when the attacks of the shadow quiet down, when the soul has just passed through the phase of being torn between light and trial, there often appears a very strange silence. It is not intense, not chaotic, not painful like the phase before, but simply empty, flat to the point of making you uneasy. And right here, you step into one of the most delicate signs before God gives you something great, sacred silence. This is the stage when heaven seems muted, all guidance seems to vanish, and your soul must learn to stand firm in complete stillness. This silence is not his absence, even though at first it always feels that way. It is like the moment before sunrise when all of nature holds its breath, like the moment a potter pauses while shaping a new vessel, the hand stops not to abandon but to let the clay settle in silence. I call this the incubation stage, the period of spiritual gestation where the inner world retreats into darkness to prepare for a new level of consciousness to be born. I once said the creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. On the psychological level, this is when the unconscious works most intensely, reconnecting the scattered pieces within a person. But on the spiritual level, it is when God recalibrates the frequency of your soul to match what is coming. Such silences are necessary conditions for a new inner order to form. A mind that appears empty is actually reorganizing itself, just like a room must be cleared before a precious object is brought in. I once met a woman named Lena, strong, dynamic, full of faith, but after a series of upheavals, losing her job, her partner leaving, and the project she invested everything in collapsing, what scared her most was not the losses, but the silence. I pray every night, she said, but there is no answer. I used to always feel his guidance, but now it's just an empty space. I looked at Lena and told her that sometimes silence is the answer, because God only stays silent when he is doing something so deep, so vast, that any words would be unnecessary. She said that during that phase, everything in her life seemed to slow down. Work no longer progressed. Relationships paused, and emotions did not surge, but instead settled like a winter lake. Yet, in that seemingly barren state, she began to see something she had never noticed before, the stillness of her own soul. One morning, sitting alone by the window, she said she suddenly felt something small but certain. It's not that God is silent. He is teaching me to distinguish his voice from the voice of my fear. The most beautiful image for this stage is the seed. When a seed is placed into the soil, it lies in total darkness. No light, no sound, no visible sign that it is growing. But truly, it is only being incubated so its roots may grow downward and its sprout may rise upward. God's silence is like the darkness of the soil, not to bury you, but to prepare you to emerge stronger. In the Bible, there is a beautiful moment illustrating this. When the prophet Elijah fled to Mount Horeb, desperate and broken, he begged God to speak to him. Then a great wind tore the mountains apart, but God was not in the wind. An earthquake shook the ground, but God was not in the earthquake. Fire blazed, but still no voice. Finally there was a gentle whisper, a very soft breeze like a breath. and Elijah recognized that as God. The divine does not speak in chaos. He speaks in stillness, and only souls quiet enough can hear him. The human soul possesses a mechanism of self-reconstruction during its darkest seasons, like the soil asleep before spring. Sacred silence is the meeting point between science and faith. On the conscious level you hear nothing, but on the unconscious level the soul is being rebuilt. On the spiritual level, God is clearing the path. Silence is not emptiness. It is the sacred space where he places something new into your hands. Therefore, if you are in a season where your prayers fall into silence, where heaven feels closed, where your spiritual inspiration seems to disappear, do not fear. This is not a sign of ending, but a sign of revelation approaching. God does not stay silent to make you doubt. He stays silent so that you can recognize his true voice among the hundreds of other echoes. And when he speaks again, you will know instantly, because his voice never resembles anything else. It is a peace nothing in this world can create. Believe that silence is not abandonment. It is an invitation to step deeper into faith, into presence, into your own soul. And when he speaks again, what he brings will be so great that you will understand why you had to be silent first. If you are in this season of sacred silence, remember, you are still here. You are still believing. The pull toward the strongest version of yourself. When the sacred silence has just closed its door, the stage where the soul learns to stand firm in emptiness, there often comes a very small but powerful movement, a mysterious inner pull. No more chaos, no more shadow attacks, no more terrifying divine silence. Instead, you begin to feel as if you are being guided by something greater than yourself. It is not the feeling of running from your past, but the feeling of being invited into your future. This is the next sign that those who are about to receive a great blessing often experience. The self, the divine center of the human being, begins pulling you toward the strongest version of yourself. I view the self as the center of the totality of the psyche, transcending the ego, which is always fearful, controlling, and doubtful. The self is like a deep inner light, the place where the conscious, the unconscious, and the divine will meet. When a soul is about to step into a new chapter, the self begins to operate more strongly than the ego. You will feel this not through thoughts, but through a shift of energy inside your own body. Some people describe it as the feeling of coming home after being lost for years, a quiet certainty whispering, "This is who you are." I once wrote, "The self is our life's goal, for it is the completest expression of that fateful combination we call individuality. And it is precisely that complete part, the part you have not yet fully recognized, that is pulling you forward." This begins with very simple changes. Suddenly you want to live more disciplined, even though you used to procrastinate. You care about your health. You want to wake up early, eat clean, reorganize your room, let go of relationships that drain you. You no longer want to get involved in drama. You want to live slower, clearer, cleaner, both inside and out. No one is forcing you, but there is a voice inside saying, it is time to grow. And interestingly, you no longer need loud motivation. There is a new consistency, a new peace, as if every good choice you make is being supported by an invisible hand. A woman named Marissa once shared a very special story. She had worked in commerce for over 15 years, loved her job, but always felt something inside her had not been touched. One day, after a major crisis in her company, she felt a strange urge, waking up at dawn, exercising, meditating, writing things she once believed weren't for her. 6 months later, She received an offer to become the creative director for a great charitable organization, a role perfectly aligned with the deep desire she once hid from herself. She said, "It wasn't that I was trying to become a better version of myself. I just felt like something was preparing me for something I couldn't see." The self always prepares the soul before life upgrades it. Many people in this stage describe it as if an old layer of skin is falling off, not painfully but lightly, and they realize they are stepping into the maturity of their soul. Before you see changes in the external world, the spirit has already begun restructuring itself to prepare you for a higher frequency of living. I call this the emergence of the self. You will notice that at this time, things that once attracted you suddenly feel cheap. Compliments no longer excite you. Criticism no longer breaks you. People carrying heavy energy drift away without effort. You no longer want to argue, to prove, to compete. You want simplicity, authenticity, truth yourself. You even begin to feel a kind of resistance toward anything unworthy of your soul, as if an inner door has closed permanently. And this is the surest sign that something big is coming. When God prepares a blessing for you, He always prepares you first. No blessing falls into the hands of a soul that is not yet ready. The self is the final stage of preparation. You will feel yourself being guided not by fear but by peace, not by desire but by clarity, not by pressure but by maturity. This is the moment you start believing in yourself, not through fake confidence but through the awareness that your soul is awakening. This is when the conscious mind, the unconscious, and the divine will stop clashing and begin aligning, and when the soul aligns, life aligns. If you are experiencing this, wanting to live differently, wanting to live deeper, wanting to become more real, know that this is not a random change. This is a sign. It is the self pulling you toward where you belong. It is God sharpening your soul to receive what you have prayed for so long. When you look back at the entire journey you've just traveled, you will realize something profound. None of the signs appeared to test you. They appeared to prepare you. God never gives a great blessing to a soul that has not been made deep, made wide, and made new. He shapes you through layers of movement that sometimes only your heart can feel. And then one day you will understand why you had to go through such long nights, why He was silent, why old doors closed, why people who once mattered had to leave your life. It was not to make you lose, but to make room for what is right, what was written for you long ago. The soul always knows where it must go, and only when you shed your old shell can you fully hear that guidance. If these words make you feel somewhat illuminated, perhaps you might share these thoughts with another who is also walking through signs they have not yet understood. This journey is not for you to become someone else, but to step fully into the chapter God has prepared with strength, peace, and deep inner knowing.